Welcome back. We are ready to do the read aloud for The Wind in the Willows, Part 10, Lesson 10, The Further Adventures of Toad, Part 1. The front door of the hollow tree faced eastward, so Toad was woken up at an early hour. The bright sunlight was streaming in on him, and his toes were exceedingly cold. Just before he woke up, he had been dreaming that he was at home in bed on a cold winter's night. He would probably have been aroused much earlier had he not slept for some weeks on straw strewn on a stone floor. Sitting up, he rubbed his eyes first and his complaining toes next, wondered for a moment where he was, then, with a leap of the heart, remembered everything: his escape, his flight, his pursuit, and that he was free. Free! The word and the thought alone were worth 50 blankets. He shook himself and combed the dry leaves out of his hair with his fingers. Then he marched forth into the comfortable morning sun, cold but confident, hungry but hopeful. He had the world all to himself that early summer morning: the dewy woodland, the green fields, the road itself. Toad, however, was looking for something that could talk and tell him clearly which way he ought to go. The country road was presently joined by a canal. Toad, having traveled fairly extensively, knew that both the road and the canal were coming from somewhere and going to somewhere. Do you remember talking about a canal in social studies, where it's a waterway that connects two larger bodies of water, like the Panama Canal? "That's a fact, Toad, my boy," he proclaimed confidently as he marched along by the water's edge. Round a bend in the canal came plodding a solitary horse, so one horse. From a rope attached to his collar stretched a long, taut line. Toad let the horse pass him. With a pleasant swirl of quiet water, a barge slid up alongside him. The barge's brightly painted gunwale was level with the towing path, and its sole occupant was a large woman wearing a sunbonnet. The gunwale is the top edge around the deck of a boat. And there's two vocabulary words in there, boys and girls: solitary, which means alone or one, and occupant. Its sole occupant on the boat was a large woman wearing a sunbonnet, means that they live there or they're inhabiting that area. "A nice morning, ma'am," she remarked to Toad as she drew up level with him. "I dare say it is, ma'am," responded Toad politely as he walked along the towpath abreast of her. "I dare say it is a nice morning to them that's not in trouble, like what I am. Here's my married daughter. She asks me to come to her at once, so off I comes, not knowing what may be happening, but fearing the worst. And I've left my business to look after itself. I'm in the laundering line, and I've left my young children too. I've lost all my money and lost my way, and as for what may be happening to my married daughter, why, I don't like to think of it, ma'am." "Where might your married daughter be living, ma'am?" asked the barge woman. And remember, a barge is a large ship that pushes or pulls smaller ships. "She lives near the river, ma'am," replied Toad, "close to a fine house called Toad Hall. Perhaps you may have heard of it." "Toad Hall? Why, I'm going that way myself," replied the barge woman. "This canal joins the river some miles further on, a little above Toad Hall, and then it's an easy walk. I'll give you a lift." She steered the barge close to the bank, and Toad stepped lightly on board and sat down with great satisfaction. Toad's luck again, he thought. "So you're in the laundering business, ma'am," said the barge woman politely, "and a very good business you've got, too." "Finest business in the whole country," said Toad airily. "All the gentry come to me, wouldn't go to anyone else. You see, I understand my work thoroughly, and attend to it all myself. Washing, ironing, clear starching, making up gents' fine shirts for evening wear, everything's done under my own eye." "But surely you don't do all that work yourself, ma'am?" asked the barge woman respectfully. Oh, I have girls, said Toad lightly. 20 girls or thereabouts. So do I, too, said the barge woman with great heartiness. It seems you are very fond of washing. I love it, said Toad. Never so happy as when I've got both arms in the wash tub. What a bit of luck meeting you, observed the barge woman. Why, what do you mean? Asked Toad nervously. Well, replied the barge woman, I like washing too, but my husband, he's such a fellow for shirking his work and leaving the barge to me. I simply do not have a moment to see to my own affairs. By rights, he ought to be here now. Instead of which, he's gone off with the dog to see if they can't pick up a rabbit for dinner. Says he'll catch me up at the next lock. But meantime, how am I to get on with my washing? Now I want to show you this picture. The barge woman's husband said he'll meet her at the next lock. This is a lock on a canal. When the boat gets to it, it sort of opens up so that they can get through, but they keep it closed so that not too much water flows in. Says he'll catch me up at the next lock, but meantime, how am I to get on with my washing? Oh, never mind about the washing, said Toad, not liking the subject. Try and fix your mind on that rabbit. Got any onions? I can't fix my mind on anything but my washing, said the barge woman, and I wonder you can be talking of rabbits with such a joyful prospect before you. There's a heap of things of mine that need washing. If you'll just take one or two of the most necessary sort, I won't venture to describe them to a lady like you, and put them through the wash tub. Why, it'll entertain you and help me. You'll find a tub handy and soap and a kettle on the stove. How many of you would be excited to do lots of washing? Here, you let me steer, said Toad, now thoroughly frightened, and then you can get on with your own washing. I'm more used to gentlemen's things myself. Let you steer, replied the barge woman, laughing. It takes some practice to steer a barge properly. No, you shall do the washing, and I'll stick to the steering. Don't try and deprive me of the pleasure of giving you a treat. Toad was fairly cornered. He saw that there was no means of escape and resigned himself to his fate, his destiny. If it comes to that, he thought in desperation, I suppose any fool can wash. What do you think? Do you think anyone can wash properly? Toad fetched a tub, soap, and other necessaries from the cabin, selected a few garments at random, and set to. A long half-hour passed, and every minute of it saw Toad getting crosser and crosser, meaning angrier. Nothing that he could do would remove the stubborn grime. Once or twice he looked nervously over his shoulder at the barge woman, but she appeared to be gazing out in front of her. His back ached badly, and he noticed with dismay that his hands were beginning to get all crinkly. A burst of laughter made him straighten himself and look around. The barge woman was leaning back and laughing unrestrainedly, meaning uncontrollably. I've been watching you, she gasped. I thought you must be a humbug all along. Never watched so much as a dishcloth in your life, I'll bet. Humbug here means a person who is faking. Toad's temper, which had been simmering for some time, now fairly boiled over, and he lost all control himself. You silly barge woman, he shouted. Don't you dare talk to me like that. I would have you know that I am a very respected Toad. I may be under a bit of a cloud at present, but I will not be laughed at by a barge woman. The woman moved nearer to him and peered under his bonnet. Why, so you are, she cried. A horrid, nasty, crawly Toad, and in my nice clean barge, too. Now that is a thing I will not have. She relinquished the tiller for a moment. One big mottled arm shot out and caught Toad by a foreleg, while the other gripped him fast by a hind leg. Then the world turned upside down, and Toad found himself flying through the air. The water, when he eventually reached it, proved quite cold. He rose to the surface, spluttering. When he had wiped the duckweed out of his eyes, the first thing he saw was the barge woman looking back at him and laughing. Toad vowed revenge, meaning he was going to get back at her. He struck out for the shore and climbed up the steep bank. Gathering up his wet skirts, he ran after the barge as fast as his toad legs would carry him. The barge woman was still laughing when he drew up level with her. "Put yourself through your mangle, washerwoman," she called out, "and iron your face, and you'll pass for quite a decent-looking toad." Here is a picture of a mangle. It's a type of large machine used for pressing sheets or clothing between two rollers to get them nice and crisp and wrinkle-free. Imagine if you had to use that at home to help with your clothing. Toad never paused to reply. Solid revenge was what he wanted, and he saw it just ahead of him. Running swiftly on, he overtook the solitary horse, unfastened the tow rope, jumped on the horse's back, and urged it to gallop forward. He steered the horse toward the open country, abandoning the tow path. He looked back and saw that the barge had run aground on the other side of the canal. Toad laughed aloud as he continued to spur the horse onward. The barge horse was not capable of galloping about the countryside, and its gallop soon subsided into an easy walk. But Toad was quite contented with this, knowing that the barge was not moving at all. Why do you think Toad is feeling contented, which means feeling satisfied? And what do you think that tells us about him as a character?